Hey, I'm golf broadcaster Matt Adams. The updated and expanded second edition of my book, The Golf Round I'll Never Forget, Golf's Biggest Stars Recall Their Finest Moments, is now available. Readers can expect to march with Arnie's Army at the 1960 U.S. Open, relive Jack Nicklaus's remarkable 1986 Masters win, and be amazed by the Tiger Slam. The Golf Round I'll Never Forget, Golf's Biggest Stars Recall Their Finest Moments. Pick it up where fine books are sold, including BarnesandNoble.com and Amazon.com.
This day in sports history. Hey, and welcome back to another edition of This Day in Sports History. It's June 5th, and on this day in 1977, it was Bill Walton and the surprising Portland Trailblazers pulling off something that had never been done before. This was Game 6 of the NBA Finals. The Blazers were playing the Philadelphia 76ers. The Sixers had taken Games 1 and 2. The Blazers had fought back to win Games 3, 4, and 5. Now, there wasn't much of an answer for Bill Walton in this game. He scored 20, pulled 23 rebounds, he blocked 8 shots, and handed out 7 assists. With 6 minutes to play, Portland led by a dozen. But the 76ers had Dr. J, and he, along with Lloyd World B. Free, were able to cut the deficit down to 3 with 50 seconds to play. But they just couldn't find the buckets that they needed to tie it up or win it. Portland won 109-107, taking the series in 6 games and becoming the first NBA team to come back from an 0-2 deficit in the series to win it. Julius had 40 points in the losing effort, but Blazer Mania was in full force during this series, and it continued for years to come. Portland's love of the Blazers equated into an NBA record 809 consecutive sellouts at the old Memorial Coliseum. Of course, with a capacity just shy of 13,000, it probably wasn't as difficult as other arenas in the NBA. But of course, Bill Walton was a huge part of Blazer Mania getting started. Walton unfortunately passed away on May 27th at the age of 71 after a cancer battle. He was a one-of-a-kind guy, and he will certainly be missed. From there, let's skip to 1991 and one of those iconic Michael Jordan moves. In fact, to quote Marv Albert, it was a spectacular move. This was Game 2 of the NBA Finals, and the Bulls were hoping to tie up the series after Jordan's former Tar Heel teammate Sam Perkins buried the game winner in Game 1 to give the Lakers the 2-point win. In this one, the Bulls put some space between them and the Lakers in the third quarter. Now in the fourth, the Bulls were up 14 with under 8 to play. Cliff Livingston found Michael at the top of the key. He drove the lane, and he looked like he was going up with his right hand. But Perkins appeared ready to go for the shot block. So Jordan switched the ball to his left, hung in the air just a little longer than any human really could, and he scooped it up and in off the glass. Here's Marv Albert to paint the picture for you.
The look away to Livingston. Jordan. Oh, a spectacular move by Michael Jordan. That's 13 consecutive field goals.
The Bulls won Game 2, 107-86. He finished with 33 in this one. Jordan's other former Tar Heel teammate, James Worthy, scored 24 for the Lakers. On this day in 1999, a phantom foul led to one of the most famous 4-point plays in NBA playoff history. This was Game 3 of the Eastern Conference Finals between the New York Knicks and their old nemesis, the Indiana Pacers. New York had been down in the game, but a 7-2 run powered by Johnson's scoring put them in a position to tie it up. The Pacers were up 3 with 11.9 seconds remaining. The Knicks had the ball out of a timeout. The ball came into the Knicks' Larry Johnson on the left sideline, standing just to the right of Pacers coach Larry Bird. Johnson was guarded by Antonio Davis. After a couple of stutter steps, Johnson put the ball on the floor and dribbled to his left, and he launched a 3. As the ball arced towards the basket, the referee's whistle blew, and then the shot went in. Johnson went into a mini celebration after the shot, but realized that he now had a free throw to put them ahead. But people, well, mostly Pacers fans, were left wondering where was the foul? Or, better yet, when was the foul? Looking at the replays, Davis made contact with Johnson on his move, but released before Johnson went into his shot motion. He didn't even contest the shot. Even by the loose continuation rules in the NBA, this was a gift. Bill Walton was sitting courtside for this one and doing commentary for the television broadcast, and he called it a phantom foul. But with 5 seconds left on the clock, Johnson stepped to the line and he hit the free throw, turning a 3-point deficit into a 1-point Knicks lead. The Pacers had a shot to win, and of course, with the history of Reggie Miller as the Knick killer in the Garden, surely he'd get the last shot. Surprisingly, no. And it wasn't like he was covered. He flashed to near midcourt unguarded, and instead, again with 5.7 seconds left, an eternity in the closing minutes, the ball came into Mark Jackson. Not a bad choice, but Reggie Miller is right there. How do you not give him the final shot? Anyway, Jackson wound up triple-teamed, and he put up a shot that came up short. The Knicks, thanks to Larry Johnson's famous phantom 4-point play, had beaten the Pacers. On this day in 1987, there was a dramatic comeback in the College World Series. Now, the College World Series is a double elimination format. So if you lose one, you drop into a loser's bracket. If you lose again, well, then you go home. This was one of those elimination games. It was Stanford and LSU at Rosenblatt Stadium in Omaha, Nebraska. The game was tied at 2 at the end of the 9th. In the 10th, the Tigers, as the visiting team, scratched for 3 runs, with Craig Faulkner seemingly the hero, lining a 2-out pitch with the bases loaded to the wall to score the 3. Now, trailing 5-2 with 2 outs and none on in the bottom half, the Stanford Cardinal were finally able to get base runners with a couple of walks. LSU coach Skip Bertman then brought on freshman Ben McDonald in relief. He hit the first batter he faced to load the bases. That brought up freshman Paul Carey. Carey was 0 for 3 in the game, hitting only .200 in the College World Series, and he had only 1 RBI. With the count 1-1, McDonald grooved a fastball that Carey connected on, and he sent it over the left field wall for the grand slam walk-off homer to send the Cardinal on and sent the Tigers packing. It put Stanford back on the path to the national championship game, which they would win. In 1925, it was golf's U.S. Open being played in Worcester, Mass. This was a playoff between Bobby Jones and Scotland's Willie McFarlane. Now, back then, and in fact for another 5 decades, they did not play a sudden death playoff. They played full rounds. The two played 18 in the morning, but were still tied. So they played another 18 in the afternoon. The golfers came to the 18th still tied after 35 holes. Jones's approach to the green wound up in a greenside bunker. After failing to get up and down for par, McFarlane tapped in for his 4 to win the 1925 U.S. Open by 1 shot. The fact that there was even a playoff was due to Jones's honesty. During the first round, Jones called a 1-shot penalty on himself after the ball moved in the rough when he addressed it. Nobody saw it, and nobody would have known if he had not said a thing. The 1-shot penalty he added to his score eventually led to the tie and the 36-hole playoff. When lauded by the press for his honesty, Jones simply replied, "You may as well praise me for not robbing a bank." And in 1937, it was War Admiral racing into horse racing history, winning the Belmont Stakes and the Triple Crown in impressive fashion. Now, if you remember the movie Seabiscuit, then you know that War Admiral was the progeny of Man o' War, who won the Triple Crown 17 years before. War Admiral broke his old man's track record with a time of 2:28 3/5 seconds. He beat the field by an easy 4 lengths. War Admiral tore a front hoof in the starting gate just prior to the start of the race, but it didn't hamper him, obviously, in his gallop into the record books. The famous match race with Seabiscuit was still more than a year and a half away in November of 1938. And time now for today's non-sports Did You Know? And look, I get it. Not everybody enjoys a mime, but this may change your opinion a little bit. The most famous mime of all time, Frenchman Marcel Marceau, was part of the French resistance in World War II. He used pantomime to quiet children and help them escape to Switzerland. That's all for today. I'll have more tomorrow on This Day in Sports History. This has been an original Thrive Suite production.
Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, a.k.a. the Football History Dude, and I hope that you enjoyed this recent episode presented by the Sports History Network and we're able to learn some good old-fashioned sports history knowledge nuggets. I started the Sports History Network back in 2020 with the mission to help podcasters find a community of like-minded sports history nerds, as well as helping aspiring podcasters to start their own shows. We have a little bit over 30 shows on the network right now covering all sorts of sports history, but as far as I'm concerned, we're just at the toothpick in the ocean moment, that can't even figure it out because there's so much more coming. We wanted to create the ultimate headquarters for sports yesteryear, starting with Podcast Network and our website, but we're going to continue to move into other mediums as well. And here's the cool part, because we want you to be part of our team. So if you're interested in starting your own podcast, or maybe being a guest on one of our shows, or who knows, maybe even writing an article for us over on the website, seriously, all you got to do is reach out to us on the contact page over at sportshistorynetwork.com. You can be as technologically savvy as a Neanderthal tapping on a stone trying to figure out this whole hieroglyphics thing back in the day. Again, it doesn't matter, because even if you don't understand the whole podcast space, we have a production team that can pretty much help you out with doing everything. All you got to do, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com, head to the contact page, fill it out. That message goes right to me, and I'll reach out to you as soon as I can. But for now, dude, I'm through if you're through.